Look, I never thought I'd be that person. You know, the one whispering secrets in dimly lit parking garages, checking over their shoulder before sending a text message, lying to friends about weekend plans. But here I am, and honestly, I don't even know how it got this far. My name is Rebecca Matthews, though everyone at the office calls me Becca. I'm 32 years old, been working in corporate finance for almost a decade now, and up until about 8 months ago, my life was pretty damn ordinary. Wake up, coffee, commute, spreadsheets, more coffee, commute home, Netflix, sleep, repeat. I had convinced myself that this was what adulting looked like, that everyone felt this low-level hum of dissatisfaction underneath their professional smiles and business casual outfits. Then Jonathan Pierce walked into our regional office on a rainy Tuesday morning in March, and everything started shifting in ways I didn't see coming. Jonathan, or Mr. Pierce, as we were all instructed to call him during that first awkward all-hands meeting, was our new vice president of operations. He was being transferred from the Manhattan headquarters to oversee our struggling Midwest branch, and from the moment he introduced himself, you could feel the energy in that conference room change. He wasn't like our previous leadership, those middle-aged men in ill-fitting suits who seemed perpetually exhausted by their own existence. Jonathan was different. Early 40s, tall, with this presence that made you sit up straighter without even realizing you were doing it. Dark hair starting to gray at the temples, sharp jawline, and these incredibly intense brown eyes that seemed to actually see you when he looked your way. I remember thinking during that meeting that he seemed too polished for our office, too big city for our small Midwestern operation where most people had been working together since before I was born. He talked about efficiency metrics and performance standards and revenue projections, and I honestly wasn't paying as much attention to his words as I was to the way he commanded the space, the way people leaned forward when he spoke. After the meeting, my desk mate Sandra grabbed my arm in the hallway. She's 58, been with the company for 30 years, and has seen every type of manager you can imagine. "That one's going to shake things up," she whispered, and there was something almost nervous in her voice. "Mark my words, Becca. Things are about to get very interesting around here." She had no idea how right she was, though not in the way either of us expected. For the first few weeks, Jonathan kept his distance from most of us. He spent his time in closed-door meetings with department heads, reviewing files, conducting what he called operational assessments. I'd see him sometimes in the break room, always with his phone to his ear, pacing while he talked in that low, authoritative voice. He'd nod at people politely, but never really engaged in the casual small talk that usually filled those spaces. There were rumors, of course. There are always rumors. Some people said he was divorced, others claimed he'd never been married, too focused on his career. Someone heard he had a place downtown. Someone else said they'd seen him at an expensive restaurant with a woman who definitely wasn't from the office. I didn't participate in the gossip much. I had my own things to worry about, namely the fact that my performance reviews had been lukewarm at best for the past 2 years, and I was starting to wonder if I'd plateaued in this position. I was good at my job, reliable, accurate, but I wasn't exceptional. I wasn't the person who stayed late with innovative ideas or volunteered for high-visibility projects. I did my work, collected my paycheck, and went home to my quiet apartment where my cat Harold was the most exciting thing waiting for me. Everything changed on a Thursday evening in late April. I was one of the last people in the office, not because I was particularly dedicated, but because I'd screwed up a reconciliation report and needed to fix it before the morning. The floor was almost empty, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of the janitorial staff working their way through the building. I was deep in concentration, numbers swimming in front of my tired eyes, when I heard footsteps approaching my cubicle. "Burning the midnight oil, Ms. Matthews?" I nearly jumped out of my chair. Jonathan Pierce was standing at the entrance to my cubicle, jacket off, tie loosened, looking far more human than I'd ever seen him during business hours. There was something almost intimate about seeing him like that, slightly disheveled, the armor of his usual formality just a bit relaxed. "Mr. Pierce," I stammered, immediately feeling foolish for being startled. I didn't realize anyone else was still here. Just finishing up some reports that needed correction. He leaned against the cubicle wall, and I caught a hint of his cologne, something expensive and subtle that made me suddenly very aware of how I probably looked after 10 hours at the office. Mind if I ask what you're working on? I explained the reconciliation issue, probably in more detail than necessary, my words tumbling out faster than usual. He really listened, his eyes focused on my computer screen as I walked him through the problem. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled over Sandra's empty chair and sat down next to me. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward my keyboard. For the next 40 minutes, Jonathan Pierce sat in that borrowed chair and helped me work through the reconciliation. But it wasn't just help, it was more like a masterclass. He showed me shortcuts I'd never learned, explained approaches to data analysis that made everything clearer, pointed out patterns I'd been missing for years. His knowledge was impressive, but what struck me more was how patient he was, how he explained things without making me feel stupid for not already knowing them. "There," he said finally, leaning back with a satisfied expression. "That should do it. You've got good instincts, Ms. Matthews. You just need to trust them more." I stared at the corrected report on my screen, feeling something unfamiliar. Pride, maybe. Or possibility. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Really. You didn't have to spend your evening helping me with this." "Jonathan," he said, and when I looked at him confused, he smiled slightly. "When it's after hours and we're the only ones here, you can call me Jonathan. The formality is for show anyway, keeps the hierarchy clear during business hours. But right now, we're just two people trying to make sense of numbers that don't want to cooperate." That smile, small as it was, did something strange to my chest. "Jonathan," I repeated, testing out how his name felt in my mouth. "Thank you, Jonathan." He stood up, rolled his shoulders like he was working out tension from sitting too long. "You should head home. It's late, and these reports will still be here tomorrow if you need to review them with fresh eyes." "You're still here too," I pointed out. "Yes, well, I don't have anyone waiting for me at home except an empty apartment and probably some expired takeout in the fridge. Not exactly rushing back to that." He said it lightly, but there was something underneath the words, a loneliness that I recognized because I felt it too. "I have a cat," I offered, then immediately felt ridiculous. "His name is Harold. He's probably wondering where his dinner is." Jonathan laughed, an actual genuine laugh that transformed his usually serious face. "Harold the cat. That's quite a name." He came with it. Adopted him from a shelter 2 years ago. The name seemed to fit his personality. He's very dignified and judgmental. Sounds like most of the board members I have to deal with. He grabbed his jacket from somewhere, shrugged it on. "Come on, I'll walk you to your car. This neighborhood isn't great after dark." And just like that, we walked through the empty office together, our footsteps echoing in the quiet space. In the elevator, standing closer than we probably needed to, I caught myself studying his reflection in the polished doors. There was something electric in that small enclosed space, something that made my heart beat just a little faster. In the parking garage, my car looked particularly sad next to his sleek black sedan. "That's me," I said, pointing to my aging Honda. "Not exactly impressive." "Gets you where you need to go," he said simply. "That's what matters." There was a moment, just a breath of time, where we stood there looking at each other, and I felt something shift. It was like standing at the edge of something, not sure if the ground was solid or if stepping forward would send you tumbling. "See you tomorrow, Becca," he said, using my nickname for the first time. "See you tomorrow, Jonathan." I drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight, my mind replaying every moment of that evening. Harold meowed accusingly when I finally got home, but I barely heard him. I was too busy trying to understand what had just happened and, more importantly, what it might mean. The next few weeks were a study in subtle changes. Jonathan, Mr. Pierce during office hours, started finding reasons to stop by my desk. Sometimes it was legitimate work questions, sometimes it was just a casual comment about something he'd noticed. Other people started noticing too. Sandra gave me curious looks. My colleague Marcus joked that I must be the boss's pet now. But it didn't feel like favoritism. It felt like Jonathan saw something in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself. He started including me in meetings I'd normally never attend, asking for my input on projects above my pay grade. At first I thought maybe he was doing this with everyone, part of his strategy to assess the team. But no, it was specifically me. He'd catch my eye across conference room tables, ask what I thought when more senior people had already spoken. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "You're good at this," he told me one afternoon when we were alone in his office reviewing quarterly projections. "Better than you give yourself credit for. Why have you been hiding in that cubicle doing basic reconciliations when you clearly have the analytical skills for strategic work?" I didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain that somewhere along the way, you'd stopped believing you could be more than what you already were? That it felt safer to stay small than to risk reaching for something and failing? "I guess I never thought anyone would take me seriously," I admitted. "I'm taking you seriously." His voice was firm, certain. "The question is whether you're willing to take yourself seriously." That conversation stayed with me. Started keeping me awake at night, turning over in my mind while Harold purred obliviously beside me. Jonathan was right. I had been playing small, hiding.
But why?
Fear, probably. Fear of failure. Fear of being seen and found wanting. All those safe, comfortable fears that keep you exactly where you are. Things escalated, though that's probably not the right word, on a Friday evening in June. The office was having one of those mandatory social events that everyone attends but no one really enjoys, a happy hour at a bar down the street to celebrate some quarterly target we'd apparently met. I almost didn't go. These things always felt awkward to me, watching everyone try too hard to seem casual and fun outside of work. But Sandra convinced me, said it would look bad if I didn't show up, especially now that Jonathan seemed to be mentoring me. The bar was crowded, loud, full of coworkers who transformed into slightly different versions of themselves with alcohol. I nursed a glass of wine in a corner, making small talk with Sandra and a few others from accounting. I'd seen Jonathan come in, watched him make his rounds, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, playing the role of approachable leader. He was good at it, that performance of casual authority. Around 8, people started trickling out. Early meetings, babysitters, just general exhaustion from a long week. I was about to leave too, when Jonathan appeared beside me. Up close, I could tell he'd had a couple drinks. Not drunk, just relaxed, his usual careful control loosened just slightly. "You're not leaving yet, are you?" he asked. I was thinking about it. These things aren't really my scene. Mine either, if I'm honest. He glanced around at the remaining coworkers. "Want to get out of here? There's a quiet place a few blocks over. Actual good wine, not this house brand garbage." I should have said no. Every professional boundary, every HR guideline, every sensible voice in my head was screaming that this was a bad idea. But I looked at him, at the invitation in his eyes, and all I could think was that I was tired of being sensible, tired of always choosing the safe path. "Sure," I heard myself say. "Lead the way." The place he took me to was nothing like the corporate bar we'd left. It was intimate, dimly lit, the kind of wine bar where people spoke in low voices and the music was jazz played at just the right volume. We found a table in the back corner, ordered a bottle of something I couldn't pronounce, and suddenly it was just the two of us in our own bubble, separate from work and expectations and all the reasons this was complicated. "Tell me something real," Jonathan said after our glasses were filled. "Not work stuff. Not professional, Becca. Something true about who you are." The wine made me brave. "I'm lonely," I said simply. "I moved here 5 years ago for this job, and I never really built a life outside of it. I have acquaintances, not friends. I have routines, not adventures. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching my life happen from the outside, like I'm not really participating in it." He was quiet for a moment, turning his glass slowly. "I know that feeling. I've spent the last 15 years climbing corporate ladders, moving from city to city for promotions, building a career that looks impressive on paper. But at the end of the day, I go home to empty apartments that I barely bother decorating because I know I'll move again soon. I have drinks with colleagues and dinners with clients and business calls at all hours. But real connection? Actual intimacy? I can't remember the last time I had that." "Is that why you're not married?" I asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. But he didn't seem offended. "I was engaged once, about 8 years ago. She was great, really. Smart, beautiful, patient with my schedule. But one day she sat me down and said she felt like she was dating a ghost, that I was never really present even when I was physically there. She deserved better than that. So she left, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. Do you regret it? Not the way you'd think. I regret that I wasn't capable of being what she needed. But I don't regret that she left. She's married now, has 2 kids, looks genuinely happy in the Christmas cards she still sends. If we'd stayed together, I would have made her miserable. We talked for hours. About families and disappointments, about dreams we'd had when we were younger, and how they'd morphed into something more practical over time. About the weight of expectations and the fear of mediocrity. About what it felt like to wake up one day and realize you'd built a life that looked fine from the outside, but felt hollow on the inside. Somewhere around midnight, the conversation shifted, became quieter, more charged. We'd moved from opposite sides of the table to sitting next to each other, our knees touching under the table. His hand was resting near mine, and the space between our fingers felt electric with possibility. I should get you home, he said, but he didn't move. Probably, I agreed, but I didn't move either. Becca. The way he said my name, low and careful, made my breath catch. If I kiss you right now, everything gets complicated. Maybe I want complicated, I whispered back. And then his hand was in my hair, and his lips were on mine, and nothing else mattered. Not the office, not the professional boundaries we were obliterating, not the voice in my head listing all the reasons this was a terrible idea. There was just the taste of wine on his tongue, and the solid warmth of his body, and the feeling that I was finally actually living instead of just existing. We left the bar together. He called a car, because we'd both had too much wine to drive. In the back seat, we couldn't keep our hands off each other, kissing like teenagers, breathless and urgent. The driver pretended not to notice, kept his eyes on the road, while we created our own world in the darkness behind him. Your place or mine? Jonathan murmured against my neck. Yours, I decided. Harold will be fine for one night. His apartment was exactly what I'd expected. High-rise building downtown, modern and minimalist, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city lights, expensive furniture that was more functional than personal, kitchen that clearly never got used for actual cooking. It was beautiful and impersonal, exactly what he described. Welcome to my temporary home, he said, suddenly seeming almost self-conscious. I know it's not exactly warm and inviting. It's fine, I said, but I understood what he meant. There was nothing of him here, no photos or personal items or signs that this was someone's actual home rather than just a place they slept between work days. But then he was kissing me again, and we stopped talking. Clothes disappeared as we made our way to his bedroom, a trail of professional attire marking our path. His bed was huge, the sheets expensive and soft, and when he laid me down on them I felt like I was crossing a threshold I could never uncross. Are you sure about this? He asked, hovering over me, his eyes searching mine in the dim light from the window. Yes, I breathed, pulling him down to me. I'm sure. What happened next was everything I'd been missing without even knowing it. Jonathan was attentive, almost reverent, taking his time in ways that made me shake. He touched me like I was precious, kissed me like he was memorizing the taste. And when we finally came together, it felt like something clicking into place, like finding a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. After, we lay tangled in his sheets, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. Neither of us spoke for a long time. There was too much to say, and no good way to say it. What are we doing? I finally whispered into the darkness. Something we probably shouldn't, he admitted. Something that could blow up both our careers. So we stop.
Right now.
This was one night, and we go back to normal on Monday. Is that what you want? I turned my head to look up at him. His face was shadowed, but I could see his eyes, serious and searching. No, I admitted. But I don't know how this works. You're my boss. This isn't just complicated, it's potentially catastrophic. I know. His arm tightened around me. But walking away from this, from you, feels impossible right now. We fell asleep like that, holding each other like we were trying to memorize the feeling, both knowing that morning would bring reality crashing back, but choosing to live in that moment for as long as we could. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through those massive windows and Jonathan was already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching me. It should have been creepy, but somehow it wasn't. He smiled when he saw me open my eyes, this soft, unguarded expression I'd never seen him wear at the office. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning." I became suddenly aware that I was naked in my boss's bed, and the wine glow had worn off, and oh my God, what had we done? He must have seen the panic starting in my eyes because he leaned down and kissed me, slow and thorough. "Don't spiral," he murmured against my lips. "We'll figure this out."
How?
"Jonathan, this is insane. You're the VP of operations. I'm a junior analyst. If anyone finds out, I'll be accused of sleeping my way up the ladder. You'll be accused of taking advantage. We could both lose our jobs. I know the risks." He sat up, ran a hand through his already messy hair. "But I also know that what happened last night wasn't just physical attraction or too much wine. At least not for me." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want to see where this goes. Carefully, discreetly, but I want to try. Unless you don't feel the same way, in which case we stop right now and never speak of this again." I sat up too, pulling the sheet around me, trying to think clearly. Every logical part of my brain was screaming danger. But there was another part, the part that had felt so alive in his arms, that had felt seen and valued and desired in a way I'd never experienced, and that part was drowning out all the logical concerns. "I want to try too," I said quietly. "But we have to be incredibly careful." "Agreed. At work, nothing changes. I'm your boss, you're my employee. Professional at all times. No one can know, not even our closest friends. Outside of work, we can be us, whatever that means." "That's going to be hard." "Probably impossible," he agreed. "But worth trying." That's how it started. That morning in his bed, making promises we weren't sure we could keep, agreeing to rules that would become increasingly difficult to follow. I went home eventually, wearing my dress from the night before, hoping none of his neighbors saw me doing the walk of shame from his apartment. Harold was pissed, knocking over his water bowl in protest at being abandoned all night. But I barely noticed. I was too busy replaying everything, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Monday morning was surreal. I walked into the office like normal, swiped my badge, rode the elevator to my floor, made my coffee in the break room where Sandra complained about her weekend yard work, sat down at my desk and booted up my computer. Everything was exactly the same except nothing was the same, because now I knew what Jonathan looked like without his professional armor, knew the sounds he made when he came, knew how his body felt against mine. He arrived at his usual time, walked past my cubicle with barely a glance, a crisp good morning to the team that included me, but didn't single me out. To anyone watching, it was just another Monday. But when I checked my personal email on my phone during lunch, there was a message from an address I didn't recognize with just a few words that made my heart race.
"Can't stop thinking about you."
Tonight? That's how the pattern began. Professional distance during work hours, stolen moments outside of them. We were careful, almost paranoid. Never arrived or left together. Never had lunch together. Barely spoke directly unless it was work-related and others were around. But outside the office, we built something that felt increasingly real. He'd text me addresses of restaurants in neighborhoods where we wouldn't run into anyone from work. We'd meet at his apartment, never mind because he lived downtown and I lived closer to the office where colleagues might spot us. We'd spend entire weekends hidden away, ordering delivery, watching movies, talking and laughing and making love like we were normal people having a normal relationship instead of two professionals engaged in what could only be described as career suicide if anyone found out. And it was good. Better than good. Jonathan was different outside of work, more relaxed, funnier than I'd expected. He cooked, not well but with enthusiasm, teaching me techniques he'd learned from various cooking shows he watched in hotel rooms when traveling. We'd dance in his kitchen at 2 a.m, wine-drunk and happy. He'd read to me from books he loved, his voice washing over me while I lay with my head in his lap. We talked about everything, Future dreams and past regrets, fears and hopes, and all the messy, complicated stuff that makes us human. But at work, we maintain the fiction. And that's when things started getting really complicated because about 3 months into whatever we were doing, there was an opening for a senior financial analyst position. It was a significant promotion, more money, more responsibility, the kind of opportunity one would have been crazy not to pursue. But it was in Jonathan's division. He would be directly involved in the hiring decision. "You have to apply," he told me one night at his place. We were in bed, that post-sex glow making everything feel possible. "You're qualified, more than qualified. You'd be perfect for that role." "Jonathan, I can't. If you promote me now, everyone will know something's going on. They'll say I only got it because I'm sleeping with you. You'd be getting it because you're the best candidate. I've been watching your work, Becca. You're smarter than half the senior analysts we have. You see patterns they miss, make connections they don't. You deserve this promotion. It doesn't matter what I deserve. What matters is what people will think." We argued about it for hours. He insisted I apply, said he'd make sure the process was fair, that he'd recuse himself if needed. I argued that there was no way to do this without raising suspicions. But deep down, I wanted that job. Wanted it badly. And the fact that he believed I could do it made me believe it too. So I applied. Along with 7 other people, including Marcus, who had more experience than me, and Sandra, who everyone knew deserved a promotion after decades of loyal service. The interviews were formal, conducted by a panel that included Jonathan but also the CFO and 2 other department heads. I prepared obsessively, practicing answers, researching comparable scenarios, studying market trends until my eyes crossed. The interview itself was intense. Jonathan maintained perfect professional distance, asked me tough questions without any hint of favoritism. If anything, he seemed harder on me than on my questions to the other panelists. I walked out feeling like I'd either nailed it or completely bombed it, no middle ground. 2 weeks later, HR called me into their office. Jonathan was there along with the CFO. And they offered me the position. Senior financial analyst, reporting directly to Jonathan, effective in 2 weeks. I should have been thrilled. This was everything I'd been working toward, validation that I was good at what I did. But all I could think was that now the scrutiny would intensify, now people would really be watching us, now the stakes were even higher. Marcus was pissed. He didn't say it directly, but I could see it in the way he looked at me, the way he suddenly became cool and distant. Sandra was disappointed. I could tell, though she congratulated me warmly and said I deserved it. Other colleagues had mixed reactions. Some seemed genuinely happy for me. Others clearly thought something fishy was going on. The office gossip mill went into overdrive. I heard whispers in the break room that cut off when I entered. Saw knowing looks exchanged when Jonathan and I were in meetings together. No one said anything directly, but the suspicion was there, hovering like smoke. "We need to cool it," I told Jonathan one night. "People are suspicious. We need to put some distance between us, at least for a while." "Absolutely not." His response was immediate and firm. "We've done nothing wrong. You earned that promotion fair and square. I'm not going to let office gossip dictate our personal lives." "This isn't just gossip, Jonathan. This is our careers. If someone reports us to HR, if this becomes an official thing, we're both screwed. Then we're screwed together." He pulled me close, held me tight. "I'm not giving you up because of what other people might think." But the pressure was getting to me. Every day at work felt like walking a tightrope, constantly monitoring how I interacted with Jonathan, how I presented myself, making sure nothing could be construed as inappropriate. I threw myself into the new role, working longer hours than necessary, taking on extra projects, trying to prove that I deserved the promotion on merit alone. Jonathan noticed, of course. "You're burning yourself out," he said one evening when I showed up at his place exhausted. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone." "Yes, I do. I have to prove I got this job because I'm good at what I do, not because I'm sleeping with you." "You are good at what you do. Extraordinary, actually. Why can't you see that?" Because somewhere deep down, I wasn't sure I believed it. Despite everything, despite his faith in me and my own success, there was still that voice whispering that maybe everyone was right. Maybe I had gotten ahead because of our relationship. Maybe I wasn't as capable as he thought I was. Things came to a head on a Tuesday in October. There was a major client presentation, high stakes, potential for a huge contract. Jonathan was leading it, but he'd asked me to prepare significant portions of the analysis. I'd worked on it for weeks, perfecting every slide, triple-checking every number. The morning of the presentation, Marcus cornered me by the coffee machine. "Must be nice," he said, his voice dripping with barely concealed resentment. "Getting handed major presentations when you've barely been in the role for 2 months." "I earned my spot on this presentation," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sure you did. We all know how you earned it." He walked away before I could respond, leaving me shaking with anger and shame. The presentation went perfectly. Our analysis was solid, our recommendations clear, and the client was impressed. They signed a 3-year contract worth millions. It was a massive win for our division, and Jonathan made sure to credit my work in front of everyone. But instead of feeling proud, I felt sick. Because I could see it in people's faces, the assumptions they were making, the story they were telling themselves about how I'd gotten there. That night, I went to Jonathan's apartment ready to end things. It had to stop. The success wasn't worth the constant scrutiny, the whispers, the feeling that I was betraying some code of professional conduct. I'd rather go back to being invisible in my cubicle than deal with this constant pressure. But when I got there, he had champagne chilling and dinner ordered from my favorite restaurant. He swept me into his arms the moment I walked in, spinning me around, grinning like a kid. "Did you see their faces when you presented the market analysis? You were brilliant, Becca. Absolutely brilliant. They couldn't poke a single hole in your projections. This is going to change everything for us, for the division, maybe for your whole career trajectory." And looking at him, at his genuine pride and joy in my success, I couldn't bring myself to end it. Instead, I kissed him, let him pull me close, chose once again to live in this moment rather than worry about all the ways it could fall apart. "I love you," he said later, when we were tangled in his sheets, sleepy and satisfied. "I know we haven't said it, I know it makes everything more complicated, but I love you. Not just what we do here, not just the physical stuff, though God knows that's incredible.
But you.
Who you are. How your mind works. The way you laugh at terrible jokes. How you talk to Harold like he understands every word. All of it." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. "Jonathan, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens, however this all plays out, I need you to know that this is real for me. You're not just some affair or midlife crisis or whatever people might think. You're it. You're the person I want." I kissed him to buy myself time, to avoid having to respond, because the truth was both terrifying and simple. "I love you too," I whispered finally. I tried not to, tried to keep it just physical, just convenient. But I love you, and that scares me more than anything else about this situation. "I know. It scares me too." We held each other in the darkness, and I wished so desperately that we were just two normal people who'd met under normal circumstances, who could love each other without all the complications and risks and potential consequences. The next few months were a strange mix of professional success and personal anxiety. My work continued to shine. Jonathan gave me increasingly important projects, and I delivered on every single one. My reputation in the company was growing. People outside our division started requesting my analysis. The CFO mentioned me in a leadership meeting as an emerging talent to watch. But the gossip never really died down. It morphed, became more subtle, but it was always there. The knowing looks, the careful way people worded things around me, the sense that I was being evaluated on more than just my work performance. Jonathan and I got better at hiding it. We established elaborate protocols for our outside contact. Separate cars always. Different times leaving. We'd go hours or days without texting during work hours. We never, ever let ourselves slip into any behavior that could be construed as inappropriate at the office. If anything, he was harder on me in meetings than on anyone else, pushing me, challenging my recommendations, making me defend every position. It was exhausting. Living two separate lives, being two different versions of myself. Professional Becca, who was climbing the corporate ladder through talent and hard work. And the other Becca, who spent her nights and weekends wrapped up in a relationship that could destroy everything she was building if it came to light. The breaking point came in February, almost a year after that first night together. There was a reorganization happening at the company level, and rumors were swirling about potential layoffs and reassignments. Jonathan was in constant meetings with the executive team, coming home stressed and tight-faced, unable to tell me what was happening because it was confidential. Then one evening, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. I'd given him a key months ago, but he'd never used it, too paranoid about maintaining our security. But there he was, standing in my doorway, looking shaken. "They're promoting me," he said without preamble. "Senior VP, overseeing all Midwest operations. 3 states, 12 offices." "Jonathan, that's amazing. Why do you look like someone died?" "Because they want to promote you too. Regional Finance Director. You'd be overseeing all the financial analysts in those 12 offices. Report directly to the CFO. It's a huge opportunity, Becca. Life-changing." I stared at him, my mind struggling to process. That's incredible. Why aren't we celebrating? Because to take either position really, we'd have to disclose our relationship to HR. You'd be in my reporting line again, even more directly. The company has strict policies about this. We'd have to choose the promotions or each other. The world seemed to tilt sideways. This was it. The moment we'd both been dreading and pretending wouldn't come. Reality demanding we make a choice. "What do you want to do?" I asked quietly. "I don't know. If we disclose, there's a good chance they'll force one of us to transfer to a different division, maybe a different region. Or they might let us keep the positions but put restrictions in place. Or worst case, they see the whole thing as a massive judgment failure and we both get fired despite everything we've accomplished. But if we don't disclose, we're lying, actively hiding a relationship that absolutely affects our professional dynamic. If it comes out later, the consequences could be even worse." Harold chose that moment to jump onto my lap, purring obliviously. I stroked his fur mechanically, trying to think through the impossible options in front of us. "I need time," I said finally. "This is too big to decide right now." "I know." I told them I needed a few days before giving an answer. "They think I'm considering the additional responsibility, the travel requirements. They have no idea the real reason I'm hesitating." He left shortly after, both of us too overwhelmed to find comfort in each other that night. I lay awake until dawn, running through scenarios, weighing options, trying to figure out what the right choice was when all the choices seemed wrong. Over the next few days, I talked to no one about it. How could I? The one person I wanted to discuss it with was Jonathan, but we were going in circles, both of us too scared to make a call that might destroy what we had or what we could become professionally. I thought about everything I'd worked for. The years of education, the entry-level positions, the slow climb up. This promotion would put me in a position I'd never dreamed possible. Regional director, before I was 35. The kind of role that opened doors, that established a career trajectory most people spent decades trying to achieve. But I also thought about Jonathan, about how he'd changed my life, helped me see my own potential, made me feel valued and seen. About the quiet Sunday mornings in his apartment, the way he'd read to me, the terrible meals we'd cooked together. About being loved in a way that felt real and deep and irreplaceable. How do you choose between those things? How do you weigh career success against personal happiness? And why the hell did I have to choose when men in similar situations rarely faced the same impossible calculus? On the 4th day, I made a decision. I called Jonathan and asked him to meet me at the wine bar where we'd first kissed, the scene of the crime, so to speak. He arrived looking as exhausted as I felt, the stress of the past few days written clearly on his face. "I've been thinking," I started before I could lose my nerve, "about what we should do. And I think we need to tell them. Disclose the relationship, accept whatever consequences come." He looked surprised. "Really? Becca, you could lose everything you've worked for." "So could you. But hiding this, lying about it, that's not who I want to be." And honestly, if the company can't handle the fact that two competent professionals developed feelings for each other, then maybe it's not the right place for either of us. That's a hell of a risk. Everything about us has been a risk from day one. Maybe it's time to stop hiding and start living honestly. What if they fire us both? Then we'll figure something else out. Together. I reached across the table and took his hand, not caring who might see us. I'm done living two separate lives. I'm done pretending. Either we do this for real or we end it, but I can't keep existing in this gray area. He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb stroking across my knuckles. Then he smiled, this beautiful relieved expression that made him look years younger. Okay, we tell them. Whatever happens, we face it together. We went to HR first thing Monday morning. Together, which was probably breaking protocol, but we were past worrying about protocol. The HR director, a woman named Patricia, who I'd interacted with maybe twice in my entire tenure, looked less surprised than I'd expected when we explained the situation. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "About 11 months, Jonathan said. Since last March. And during that time, Ms. Matthews received a promotion to senior analyst, is that correct?"
Yes.
A promotion she absolutely earned based on merit. The decision was made by a panel of 4 executives, not just me. Her performance reviews and project outcomes speak for themselves. Patricia made notes, her face unreadable. "I'll need to speak with both of you separately, and then we'll need to involve the legal team and upper management. This is obviously a complex situation given your positions and the timeline. You should both prepare for the possibility of disciplinary action." The next week was hell. We were both put on administrative leave pending the investigation. I sat in my apartment, unable to work, unable to think about anything except how spectacularly we might have just destroyed our careers. Jonathan was going through the same thing at his place. We'd text throughout the day, offering reassurances neither of us really believed. Finally, 9 days after our disclosure, we were both called back for a meeting. Patricia was there, along with the CFO, the general counsel, and the CEO herself, a formidable woman named Catherine Michaels who I'd only ever seen in company-wide presentations. "This has been an unusual situation to navigate," Catherine began without preamble. "On one hand, you both violated company policy by not disclosing a relationship that fell within prohibited reporting structures. That's a serious breach of protocol." My heart sank. This was it. We were getting fired. "However," she continued, after a thorough review of the circumstances, including extensive interviews with colleagues and examination of Ms. Matthews's performance record, "we have not found evidence that the relationship improperly influenced professional decisions. Ms. Matthews's promotion appears to have been merited based on objective performance metrics and peer comparisons." I hardly dared to breathe. "That being said, we cannot allow the current reporting structure to continue. Mr. Pierce, you'll take the senior VP position as planned. Ms. Matthews, we're offering you the regional finance director role, but you'll report directly to me rather than to the CFO. This removes you from Mr. Pierce's supervisory chain entirely." I looked at Jonathan, saw the same stunned disbelief I was feeling reflected in his face. "Additionally, you'll both be required to sign revised ethics agreements and participate in remedial training on relationship disclosure policies. This is being treated as a serious matter, and while we're not terminating your employment, there will be formal reprimands in your files. Any future violations of company policy will result in immediate termination. Is this understood?" "Yes," we both said in unison. "One more thing." Catherine's stern expression softened slightly. "I appreciate that you came forward voluntarily before accepting promotions that would have made this situation even more complicated. That showed integrity, even if it came later than it should have. Don't make me regret giving you both a second chance." We left that meeting in a daze, not quite believing what had just happened. We'd survived. Battered and bruised with black marks on our records, but we'd survived. And more than that, we could finally be together openly, without the constant fear and hiding. That night, we had dinner at a restaurant near the office, somewhere we'd never risked before. We held hands across the table, where anyone could see. We laughed too loud and stayed too late, and it felt like freedom. "So, Jonathan said as we walked to our cars afterward, his arm around my waist in full view of anyone who might be watching. "Wanna come over? No more sneaking around, no more paranoia. Just us." Just us. I agreed, and it felt like the most beautiful thing in the world. That was 3 months ago now. Jonathan started in his new role, traveling between offices, building his regional team. I took on the director position, managing a group of analysts across 3 states, working directly with the CFO on strategic initiatives. We're good at what we do, both of us, and slowly the gossip has died down as people see that we're still professionals, still dedicated to doing excellent work. We moved in together last month, found a place that's halfway between downtown and the office, finally a home that feels like it belongs to both of us rather than just a temporary landing spot. Harold has adjusted to having Jonathan around, though he still gets jealous when we're cuddling on the couch, and he's not the center of attention. It's not perfect. We still have to be careful about how we present ourselves at work, still deal with the occasional raised eyebrow or speculative comment. There are people who will probably never believe that I earned my position on merit rather than through my relationship. But I've learned to care less about what other people think and more about what I know to be true. I earned my place here through hard work and talent and dedication. Yes, Jonathan saw my potential and gave me opportunities to prove myself. But I'm the one who delivered. I'm the one who turned those opportunities into results. And anyone who can't see that is underestimating me at their own peril. As for Jonathan and me, we're building something real. Something that started in secrecy and shadows but has grown into a partnership that can exist in daylight. We're planning a future that doesn't involve hiding or lying or choosing between career and personal happiness. Last week, he came home with a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant and perfect. He got down on one knee in our kitchen, Harold weaving between his legs, and asked me to marry him. I said yes, without hesitation. Because despite everything we've been through, all the complications and risks and impossible choices, I know one thing for certain. He's worth it. We're worth it. This messy, complicated, wonderful thing we've built together is worth every moment of uncertainty and fear. So yes, I slept with my boss. And he promoted me. But that's not the whole story. The whole story is about 2 people who found each other in the midst of their carefully constructed professional lives and had the courage to choose love even when it meant risking everything. The whole story is about learning that you can be good at your job and in love at the same time, that one doesn't invalidate the other. That sometimes the messy, complicated, risky choice is the right one. The whole story is still being written, day by day, as we figure out how to be partners in both work and life, how to support each other's ambitions while building something together. And you know what? I wouldn't change any of it. Not the fear, not the uncertainty, not the close calls, or the impossible choices. Because all of it led me here, to this life I'm living instead of just watching from the outside, to this person who sees me fully and loves me anyway, to this version of myself who's finally brave enough to take up space in the world. So judge me if you want. Question my ethics or my decisions or my career trajectory. But I know my truth. I know what I've earned and what I've chosen and why. And that's enough. More than enough.